microphone. You can review about videography.
I have your attendance over here to sign out right at the end of this lecture. I'd like to introduce Dr. Arif Humayun. I was going to butcher it. He's going to introduce Dr. Vijani. He's from the Circle of Peace organization, which is an organization that actually brought Dr. Vijani here. So,
well, thank you very much for coming here and giving this talk, which is, I think, a hot topic. And it was some months ago, I think we started talking about it 5-6 months ago. And this topic came up, and I thought the best person, I cannot talk about women's rights for sure. And so we asked my sister here, Dr. Butts, to come and speak. She has been here before on this campus, about 5-6 years ago. I founded a Circle of Peace here in Vancouver almost 8-9 years ago, and our role is, or our objective is to have open discussion on topics which some people are very shy to talk about. And so here we are, and ask any questions, and Dr. Bhatt can try and answer them as much as she can. And she is probably the most qualified person to speak on the topic. So I won't take any more time. She has come from Philadelphia. She arrived last night, and she is just awed by the views of Mountain.
Yes,
Mountain.
yes. I'll be mesmerized with that, and I mean, it's beautiful. It's unbelievable, this campus. I would love to be a professor here. I'd love it. So good evening, everybody. What is this classroom? What is the makeup of this classroom? I'm a professor myself, so I like to know my audience. What level, what year are you in, or what? Juniors? And what is the class? What is this class?
Kind of a mix of like human development and history, I think. Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. So I have been here before, and I talked about the empowerment of women. It was an interfaith that we did with different groups, and we all talked about what we thought in our own religion, what is the empowerment of women. So today, I'm here to just talk to you about women's rights in Islam. And I think many of you would know and have heard that there's so much of controversy when it comes to the three Abrahamic religions, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And most of the time when we talk about these religions, we talk about the dissimilarities. We look for differences. We never look for what's really, how much there's a connection between all the three. And more so when it comes to Islam, and more so when it comes to women in Islam. So I hope that through this talk, I'm able to take you back to the 7th century woman, and then bring you back to the 21st century woman, and see if things have really changed. So this is basically the content of my talk. So throughout history, women and their struggle for rights has never been easy. It doesn't matter where this woman is from, what's her socioeconomic background, her race, her religion. There's always been a struggle for women throughout history. And if you think about it, discrimination sometimes starts at a very young age, sometimes when they're older and they're married, but no matter what, women are always struggling to find an identity and a voice of their own. So if you think about the West, it's only been about 100 years since women in the West had the right to vote. You all agree? Yes? And at that time, when it happened in 1920s, the conservative Christians said, no, this is against the teachings of our Holy Bible. And if you do it, you're going to undermine family life. And you all know, nowhere in the Bible would these verses be that do not let women vote. Correct? So you can see now where it's coming from. When we put these obstacles in the path of women, they're really not coming from our holy books or from our teachings. Then in the 1960s, when President Kennedy established CSW, it started to give women the ability to come out into the public, to have leadership roles. In politics, they could get educated, they could do things, and employers were not allowed to discriminate. Then comes in 1979 when the UN Assembly adopted CEDAW. CEDAW stands for the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination, all kinds of discrimination against women. And this became the International Bill of Rights. Okay, so women were at that time supposedly allowed to have civil, reproductive, and gender rights. In 1995, you're talking about just less than 20 years ago, at the 4th International Conference on Women, Hillary Clinton stands up and says women's rights are human rights. It's laughable. I'm not laughing at Hillary Clinton. I'm laughing at the connection. In 1995, 20 years ago, we're going to start saying, women are actually human beings. It's laughable. And then in 2008, they had a campaign. They said we have to end all violence against women. And you all know that it hasn't ended. And in 2010, the first Women's Equality Day was held. Okay? So this is just to give you a snapshot that in the West, women have struggled to find a voice, to find some rights, to fight for their rights. And they're still fighting for their rights. And as I said, discrimination starts even before they're born sometimes, or when they're very young. So here's an example I'm giving, not just of the West. Women in other parts of the world have also had to struggle. Female infanticide, right? In so many cultures, a boy is worth so much. A woman is worth nothing, right? So they think that the man will help them with the family life, will take care of the business. He'll carry the family name. A woman, what is a woman going to do? She's going to go and get married. She's going to belong to some other family. And we have to pay a dowry for her. We have to actually take care of expenses for getting her married. And then the Dowry Act came about in 1961. But I can tell you that in India, this dowry business still continues. And it is pretty bad where it comes to marriage, especially in the poorer families. What about human trafficking? This is a huge problem, not just in other countries. It's right here, USA and Canada. It's a huge business, $32 billion business. And unlike drugs and weapons that are sold only once, human beings can be sold over and over and over again. Okay? And it does not discriminate. When you're talking about sex trafficking, human trafficking, selling people for money, you're not talking about what the color of your skin is or what economic status you belong to, what religion you belong to. It doesn't discriminate. And neither does domestic violence. It does not discriminate. In America, this is statistics from here, 20 people are physically abused per minute in the USA. 5 times more likely to experience sexual assault. 1 out of 4 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime. 3 out of 4 of us here know somebody who has been abused or right now is being abused. Okay, we all have somebody or the other that we know in our neighborhood, in our family, somewhere or the other. This continues. Again, domestic violence does not discriminate. Okay, battering occurs, doesn't matter what class you belong, what religion, what occupation, what education. Okay? And the cost of mental health, the cost of medical services is more than $6 billion per year. Okay, and now we're all familiar with the Me Too movement. It was started in 2006. The whole reasoning for which Tarana Burke started it was to help women of color. She wanted to help the survivors. But then in October, when it became viral, the Me Too movement, it became all about the perpetrators. They wanted to speak out and say these people need to be called to action. They need to be accountable. And you know that women have spoken out, and you know what has happened to the women who have spoken out. It's a huge cost. The cost of being assaulted, the cost of being harassed, and then the cost of trying to speak out and say, I need justice. We know it's a very high cost these women are paying. Okay, so I have sort of given you a snapshot of what, throughout the world, it is nowhere in the world can you say that women can say, no, I have got all my rights and I'm, comfortable, I have an identity, I feel good about everything. So I want to take us back, this is this is summary of women of today, the present time, right? So they're denied certain rights, it doesn't matter, the boundaries, and the question that I'm going to ask you, and the question that I still don't have an answer, is why is the continued persecution still there? Why is there so much of discrimination? Why is there so much inequality? Why is there so much oppression? Okay, I don't know the answer, but it is there. So let's go back 3,000 years ago. I want to take you back 3,000 years when women were considered physically and mentally inferior to men. In chapter 3 of the Genesis, it was Eve who tempted Adam. It was Eve who brought the curse of God upon mankind forever. In the 5th and 6th century Arabia, women were considered as just mere objects. They had no rights. A birth to a daughter was a curse. We're talking about female infanticide. It was common. Women had no right to an education, free speech, property. Violence was a common practice. So I've just talked about the current times, and I'm talking to you again about 3,000 years ago. All right? Have things changed? Will they change? So then I'm going to now talk about the arrival of Islam, 1400 years ago, 7th century. So it is not, the popular belief is that Islam is a new religion. Islam is not a new religion. Okay? It is considered to be the last of the 3 Abrahamic religions. It is a continuation of God's revelations to the prophets. Prophet Moses, then Prophet Jesus, and Prophet Muhammad. And unlike popular belief, Prophet Muhammad is not an architect of a new faith. People think Islam is a new faith and he brought a new faith. It is not. We consider him to be the seal of prophets. Why? Because he completed the religions of Prophet Abraham, Prophet Moses, and Prophet Jesus. The Holy Quran, the word Quran means a book that is read often. We consider it the guidance for all mankind. It is a compilation of revelations that span 23 years. And what it does is it gives us some kind of a book from which we get guidance on basic equality, peace, and justice, how to live our life by these principles. That's what the Quran does for us. And then the final revelation that the Prophet received was in 632 AD. And this verse was revealed, "This day have I perfected your religion for you. I have completed my favors upon you and have chosen Islam as a religion." Okay? So when you think about how did the name come, where did this name Islam come from? Islam came through this verse of the Holy Quran. And unlike Judaism, which comes from the tribe of Judah, Christianity from Jesus Christ, the message of Islam for Muslims comes from this verse, which doesn't depict a place or a person. Okay, this is a message of God. Islam means peace and submission. Now, when this final revelation was received by Prophet Muhammad, notice that in this verse there's a lot of information. It first of all says, "This day I have perfected your religion for you." That means it's become complete. Secondly, it says, "I completed my favor and chose Islam as a religion for you." So when Prophet Muhammad received this revelation, he realized that his end was near. And in fact, he died a year later after this revelation. So he then, when he went for pilgrimage, he gave this famous final sermon, and it's a long sermon, but I've just picked a few snippets for you. And when I show you these snippets, you're going to say, these are just regular pieces of advice that my parents have given me, or my teachers have given me, or I give to my younger sibling. Okay, it's nothing new. It's just common sense, admonition, and advice to the Muslims that when I'm gone, this is how you should behave in the world. The first is, of course, the 5 pillars of Islam. Then he talks about superiority, that no one is superior to another person. A non-Arab is not superior to an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, a white is not superior to a black is not superior to a white, except, and look at the condition there, and this is the basic fundamental teaching of Islam, is that you're only superior in your good works and in your piety. So if God is going to reward me, he's not going to reward me on the color of my skin or the degrees I have or the house I live in or the car I drive. He's going to reward me for my good deeds that I had on this earth. Okay, so that's what he's telling his followers. What does he talk about women? We talk about women and we talk about Islam and how we are suppressed and oppressed. He said, remember, you've taken them as your wives under trust from God and with God's permission. So treat your women well, be kind to them. They're your partners and your helpers. Okay, this was 1400 years ago. This is what he told on his last pilgrimage when he stood on the Mount Arafat. Return the goods that are entrusted to you. Hurt no one so no one hurts you. How many times our parents have told us that? Return everything. Don't take people. Don't borrow stuff. It's like stealing. And don't hurt anyone so that no one hurts you. And finally, he said, one day you will appear before God and you will answer for your deeds. So he said, remember that. Do not stray from the path of righteousness after I am gone. Right? So nothing here is like, wow. It is common sense. He admonished and advised the followers at that time and said, this is what I want you to live by. These are the principles. So at that time, then what did a 7th century woman look like? Let's look. So the first woman that we talk about is Khadija, his wife. Okay? She was wealthy. She was twice widowed. She was a successful businesswoman. When she met Muhammad, she heard about him and she hired him. She said, work for my business. become part of it. He was employed by her. When she observed his character, she observed how good he was, she proposed marriage to him. 1400 years ago, a woman proposes marriage to Prophet Muhammad. They got married when she was 40 years old and he was 25. And they lived 25 years together, during which time he did not have any other wife. Okay? She was the first person, the first woman, the first Muslim to pledge allegiance, and she became a Muslim, right? So that is the history of Khadija. And so for us as Muslims, she broke many myths. She was a businesswoman, she was wealthy in her own rights, she proposed marriage, she was out in the society, she was active, she had a voice of her own. So this is what we should strive for as Muslim women. Then there were women who joined in active combat with Prophet in his army. If a woman could take part in war, then that means she must have been as competent as a man. Right? She was not told, sit at home, you're a woman, we don't need you, you stay home to take care of your men. In the Quran, there are mentioned 3 specific women. Chapter 19, the whole chapter 19 and parts of chapter 2 are devoted to Mother Mary. Okay? Hazrat Maryam is a chapter in the Holy Quran, chapter 19, and it talks about her sacrifices, it talks about her piety, her spirituality, how she gave birth, the virgin birth to Prophet Jesus. Chapter 66 talks about Asiya, the wife of Pharaoh. She is the woman who rescued baby Moses. And then finally you have in chapter 27, Queen of Sheba. She's talked about for her piety, her leadership skills, her wisdom. Okay? So these are the 3 main women. And nowhere in the Quran does it say that a woman cannot be out in the open taking part in leadership roles. So much so that Caliph Umar, who succeeded as the second caliph, he appointed a woman as a judge during that time. Okay? And then I've just given you some examples of women during that time who were politically active and participated in public affairs and were knowledgeable to impart knowledge to both men and women. Any questions so far? No? Some of you are nodding your head. I like that. You know, I'm a teacher, so I look for eye connection. I look at you. If anybody falls asleep, I throw something at you. All right. So after all this, I often am asked about women in Islam. It's so sad to be a Muslim woman. Okay, the plight of Muslim women, what they have put through. Right? So what do you think? What have you heard? What do you feel when you think of a Muslim woman? What image comes to your mind? Come on, be honest.
It's just like everybody else. Like, they go through their own hardships.
So that's how you think about them. You don't have any issues that they're going through anything more than that.
I think because of that idea that they do go through more. Like saying like, oh, you go through harder hardships, which in turn, I don't know what I'm saying. Like I think because of that idea, then they're more susceptible to hardships.
Okay.
Because of that.
Okay.
I think of strength.
Strength.
Yes. Because there are so many major stereotypes, and they go through a lot in society, and just to be a Muslim woman, it's just
Harder.
A lot of strength from facing that, I guess.
Okay. Somebody else? That's good that you have these kind of thoughts. That's really good. Anybody from this side? What do you think when you think of a Muslim woman? No? Okay, I'll tell you what I think, because these are the questions I get asked all the time, okay? They don't have a right to an education, they cannot work, they can't travel, they are forced into marriages, they cannot get divorced once they're married, and then they have to be subjected to polygamous marriages. Okay? That's not enough. I have more. Unfair inheritance rights, no economic right, they can't keep the money they earn, they're victims of violence because they have no voice. And then there's the female circumcision, which is a big myth of Islam. Honor killing, again, another myth of Islam. And then covered from head to toe. Okay? So this is what I get oftentimes. And this is what I try to answer when students ask me, or anybody asks me these questions about what I feel bad for Muslim women. Okay, so I'm just going to try to answer a few of them for you, right? So I'm going to just remove some of your misconceptions. It looks like none of you have any misconceptions. That's wonderful. So I'm going to start with the first one, and I'll talk about just in general. In general, the Quran talks about equality, talks about accountability, personal accountability and responsibility. Okay, these are very common themes that run throughout the Quran. And this is a very long verse. I don't expect you to really, read the whole thing, but you'll notice that wherever it talks about a man, it talks about a woman throughout. So if you're a believing man, you're a believing woman. If you're a steadfast man, you're a steadfast woman. You're humble, both men and women. You give charity, both men and women. If you fast, both men and women. You guard your chastity, both men and women. At the end, it says God has prepared for all of them forgiveness and a great reward. It doesn't just talk about men receiving the rewards. It doesn't say only men have to do certain things and women don't have to do it. Equal responsibility, equal reward for both men and that's very clear here. Okay? Social responsibility. We think that women have to stay at home, they can't go out, they don't have a voice. The Quranic verse says, both men and women, they are friends and protectors of each other. They enjoin good and avoid evil. You have to be out in the public if you're going to enjoin good and avoid evil. You have to have a voice, either with your example or with something you do. You have to let people know this is wrong, this is right, right? So social interactions are an essential component. What about equal rights, diverse function? This verse always appeals to me. I will suffer not the work of any worker from among you, whether male or female, to be lost. Okay? So whatever we do good, we will get rewarded for it, whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't just say for men there'll be the rewards. And you are from one another. And then finally, this verse says that we have equal rights, but because we have different physiology, we have different anatomy, our behavior, our brains are wired in a different way, we have diverse roles, different functions, and that's what the Quran says. Our Lord is He has endowed everything with the appropriate faculties and guided it to its proper use. Personal accountability. Whoever follows the right way, follows it for his own good. Whoever goes astray for his own reason, and no one bears the burden of anybody else. Okay? Personal accountability. But there is no compulsion. You can't force someone that you have to do this or you have to do that. There is no compulsion. Surely right has become distinguished from wrong. Again, this is a verse that really resonates with me, because if you're really practicing your religion, it doesn't matter what religion we practice, if we do practice it or we are good people, in our heart we always know when we're doing something right or we're doing something wrong, right? So why do we have to have compulsion or somebody force you to do something? Surely within our heart it is guided by our conscience. This is right and this is wrong. So I think this is a very important verse. And when this breaks a lot of myth about Islam, because everyone talks about how we force people, with the sword and beat people, and not true. Right to an education. The first word that the Prophet Muhammad received as a revelation was Iqra, which means read. Read in the name of the Lord. Okay? Education is very important. Can those who know be like those who don't know? And then this is a Quranic verse. When we were little, we used to use it just before we went for an exam. Oh my Lord, increase me in my knowledge. Okay? My mother would tell me, say this prayer, you'll do well in your exam. Keep praying. God, please increase my knowledge. Please. I have to study, of course, but also increase my knowledge. And Prophet Muhammad, he would often advise his people. He said, seeking knowledge is the duty of every Muslim man and woman. He didn't say just men. Seeking knowledge from the cradle to the grave, we say use it or lose it, right? A father who educates his daughter will enter paradise. And a mother is a school. If she's educated, then the whole people are educated. Okay, so this is the philosophy of Islam, not what you hear about in the media and what is being practiced in certain parts by the extremists. What about marital relationship? Again, there is no force. Parents cannot force a girl into marriage against her will. And there are many verses that in the Quran that tell you how you should behave with your spouse. And this verse, chapter 2, 188, again resonates very much. They are a garment for you and you're a garment for them. How well can you talk about a relationship? What does a garment do? What does a garment do for us? It protects us, right, from cold. It covers us. It covers our blemishes. It hides our secrets, right? That's what you are for each other, a husband and wife relationship. How beautifully it is said in the Quran, that they are a garment for you, you're a garment for them. And then Prophet Muhammad, he advised that paradise lies under the feet of your mother, not your father. Okay? And so oftentimes when you think about it as a mother, you often reflect that, am I the kind of mother under whose feet my children found paradise? Or am I the kind of mother under whose feet my children find hell? What kind of a mother am I? How am I bringing up my children? What kind of example am I? So these are very wise things that are being told to us that if we can really practice, they're beautiful. The best amongst you is the one who behaves the best towards his wife. So these are some of the examples about marital relationship. Polygamy. Okay, this is a big myth that in Islam, men must have 4 wives or whatever. It was practiced way, way before Islam came. It was legalized by the Old and New Testament, and prophets before Muhammad, except for Jesus Christ, who did not get married, entered into plural marriages. And they had many wives. Okay, there was no limitation to the number of wives in those days. But with the advent of Islam, the rule was monogamy, not polygamy. And it is not mandatory, but it is permitted under certain conditions. There are strict conditions that we have to follow, but of course we don't follow. And that's why you hear about these things. It is regulated, and the Quran says, look at the condition that is put here. You can marry 2 or 3 or 4, if you can be equally just with each of them. But if you feel you cannot be just with them, then marry 1. Okay, think about it. Can we be even, I may have 4 daughters, I may not be just with all of them, I don't treat them equally, right? You have friends, you have sisters, you have brothers. Yeah, we don't treat everybody equally. We have certain biases, we have certain partialities. The Quran is so strict. Can you be fair to all 4 of them or 2 of them? If you can't, then you marry only 1. All right? And people forget that when we talk about polygamy in Islam. And then polygamy was permitted only under certain conditions in the Quran. During the time of war, the widows that were left behind and the orphans that were left behind. Okay? And you are also permitted if, let's say, you're not able to have children and you take permission of your first wife and say, can I marry again? Let's have some, I would like to have children. So things are done in a different way, not the way it is portrayed. And so it is a practical solution, really, polygamy. At that time when it was put in the Quran and it was practiced, it was to legitimize status rather than have a mistress. In this society, it's okay to have a mistress. It's okay, you can have 1 wife only, but you can have affairs. So we have to think about it and the wisdom of these different mandates that came down. Right to a divorce. If a husband asks for a divorce, it's called talaq. If a woman asks for a divorce, it's called khulla. So women are allowed to ask for a divorce. Okay? When a woman, whatever she earns, if she decides that she wants to have a divorce, she can keep everything, it belongs to her. In Islam, whatever a woman earns belongs only to the woman. Unless she wishes to distribute it, unless she wishes to give it in charity, unless she wishes to help in the household expenses. But whatever belongs to her is hers. A husband has no right on it. But however, if she gets divorced, her husband's property can be divided equally according to the marriage contract. She's entitled for support from her husband if she requires it. Whereas custody and alimony, the Quran doesn't have a specific text on custody and alimony. There's no specific age when they talk about custody, nor about the amount in alimony. It all is dependent upon the negotiations in a fair and just manner. So treatment of a wife after divorce, either take them back on equitable terms or set them free on equitable terms. But do not take them back to injure them or to take undue advantage. If you do that, you're wronging your own soul. Okay, so there's a lot about negotiation. You talk in a fair and just manner and deal with the situation. Economic rights. In the Quran, it says, men shall benefit from what they earn and a woman shall benefit from what she earns. Inheritance. That's another one that there's a lot of misunderstanding, because in the Quran there are many, many, many different verses that talk about inheritance. Right? And I also have often got confused, because how do you keep up with this much share and that much share and this much share, and at this time this much share, that much share. But the wisdom of it is, this is the verse, men shall have a share in what parents and king folks leave behind. Women shall have a share in what parents and king's folks will leave behind. And the whole wisdom is that they talk about it in the manner of shares, because a woman has different status in her whole life. So, if she's getting inheritance as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter, as a sister, it changes. Because her economic condition changes, her needs change. Okay? So if you think about it, a Muslim woman has no financial responsibility, but all the responsibility of finances are on her, on the man, the brother, the father, the son, or the husband. So let's say there's $150,000, and oftentimes I'll hear people telling me it's not fair. The boy gets twice, the brother will get twice, but the girl will get only half. So out of 150,000, the boy will get 100,000, the woman will get 50,000. But remember, the woman doesn't have to spend that money. That 50 is all hers. Whereas the brother has to now take care of his younger sisters. He has to take care of the household. So actually, in his pocket, he may end up with only 10,000 that belongs truly to him. You see, what is better? Getting the 50, because that belongs to you. So when we think in terms of, it's really quite equitable, it's very wise in the way it's done, and it depends on when that woman is in need and what phase of her life she is. Okay? The time when the share for a male is twice that of a female is when the inheritance comes from the parents, because the brother has legal obligation for taking care of his sister. Islam does not endorse violence. Anyone who saves a life is one who has saved the whole of mankind. Anyone who kills one person has killed the whole of mankind. Okay? It's very strict about taking human life. And killing of children was prohibited because, remember, 5th and 6th century Arabia, female children were being killed, female infanticide. And so this Quranic verse came in to say, you shall not kill your children for fear of poverty, because we provide for them. Okay, this is a revelation that came. Killing your children is a gross offense. Okay? And there's no honor in honor killing. It's a distorted rationale for violence. Again, violence and discrimination against women. No religion is going to permit honor killing. These are crimes of passion. They take place in all races, all societies. Okay? Because if you think about it, no religion will allow you to kill your child, or a husband will throw acid in his wife's face, or burn a widow, right? None of this. No religion. God is merciful. He's not going to allow this kind of stuff. So these teachings doesn't make sense. Okay? What about female circumcision? Okay, you hear so much about female circumcision. And it's always, you think about it as it's Muslim, it's Islamic. Women are being subjugated to it. It's an African custom. They found Egyptian mummies, they found 5,000 years ago, they found evidence of circumcision. In the 9th century Britain, they used it to manage epilepsy and bad behavior in who? In women. Okay? They did circumcision. And we know that there's a lot of complications. Actually, WHO banned it in 1997, but the practice still continues. In Egypt, Somalia, Middle East, Indonesia, Asia, in some cultures, Egyptian culture, in Irani culture, sometimes it's considered to be an honor to have these kind of, they call them, they say the child has come of age and now she will go through this procedure. It's again another form of violence, and it is not associated with any religion. Okay, it's cultural. Okay, and there's nothing mentioned in the Quran, and it was never practiced by Prophet Muhammad on his daughters. Okay, so now modesty again. When we think about Muslim women, what thoughts come to your mind? Okay, this is another one that we get questioned a lot on, is about Islam and the Islamic veil, and you've heard about the hijab and how many places it gets banned, and then, right? So, Prophet Muhammad said that for every religion there's a characteristic, and the characteristic of Islam is haya. Haya means modesty, but it's such a word that it is hard for me to explain. When we say modesty, it seems like a very benign word. But when I say haya, it has a very different connotation, because haya transcends modesty. It means humility. It means shyness. It means, what else? Humble, humility, right? Respectful. It has a lot more meaning than just the word modest. So the Quran says applicable to both men and women. Believing men should restrain their looks and guard their body parts, and believing women should restrain their looks and guard their body part. So modesty is applicable to both. And in Islam, though it's very explicit, social interactions are permissible, but Islam prohibits sexual relationships outside of a marriage. Okay? So here's the Islamic hijab. I have put many different types, depending on where you're from, which part of the world, different cultures, different customs. There's no specific style. And then when you think about it, hijab, or this cover or the head cover, is not a new concept. It was practiced in the Bible. In the 13th century, all Assyrian women wore it except the prostitutes. In the Genesis, it talks about Rebekah, wife of Isaac, who covered herself when strange men approached. In the Old Testament, Jewish women covered their faces, and today nuns and Amish women cover their heads. So it's not a new concept at all. Okay? So just to summarize what I've said, I'm going to quote from Isabel Coleman, who wrote in her book, Paradise Lies Under Her Feet, Beneath Her Feet. She said, was Islam and the Prophet ahead of his times when they extended these rights to women in the 7th century? Okay? Because when you compare it today, we feel that things have really not moved too far. Because these rights are compatible with the UN Declaration of Human Rights 70 years ago. Okay? So her question is a good question, very good question. So then I want to come back to Karen Armstrong and what she has said, and why is there so much fear of Islam? Why the Islamophobia? No religion in the modern world is as feared and misunderstood as Islam. Okay? Muslim women are viewed as inferior species with no rights to an education, secluded from the society. Okay, why? Why? Why are Muslim women still struggling to find their voices? When I've already shown you that the Islam that came in the 7th century and the practice of Prophet Muhammad and the Holy Quran says that women have equal rights. So why? Why is there so much contradiction? Why is there so much struggle? According to Shireen Abadi, the first Muslim woman from Iran to receive the Nobel Prize in 2003, she said there is no contradiction between Islam and women's rights, because it is not Islam that oppresses women. It is the working interpretation of Islam that oppresses women. Okay? That makes sense. You read a verse, and you, according to your upbringing, according to your education, according to the way you think, according to your tribe in which you belong, are you a father, are you a grandfather, are you a woman? You interpret that verse according to the way you feel is most convenient. So for that, I just want to bring in culture versus religion. Okay? Because women's rights, as I've shown you so far, are not contradictory to Islamic teachings. It depends on the interpretation used to suppress women. Okay, the rise of political Islam has made, every time you give a right to women, they call it anti-Islamic. Attitudes towards women has become a litmus test for Islamic piety. Gender equality is state-sanctioned, it is not Islamic sanctioned at all. Then you have different tribal places where it's male-dominated, women are treated the worst. They have the harshest conditions under which they live, because these men, they try to then convert everything to patriotism rather than, Islam. Poverty, lack of education also plays a very important role in places like Asia, Middle East, Africa, where women are treated badly. Then, of course, after 9/11, there's been a big clash. There's a big void between Islam and the Western world. And one of the biggest problems that I think is that Muslims themselves are deviating from the beautiful, beautiful teachings of Islam. They're not practicing Islam. And that is why I think we ourselves are at fault. We are hijacking our own religion. And when you hear about what's happening, the Taliban, the ISIS, right, Al-Qaeda, all these extremists, that is not Islam. And then when we don't practice, we are not progressive, we don't really understand what we are learning, we don't interpret the Quran the way we are supposed to interpret it, we ourselves are a bad example, and we ourselves are telling you Islam is not a good religion. Okay. So I say women are not the problem, we are actually the solution. Right? So research time and time again, and you all may also through your studies know that when you invest in a woman, you have better family, healthier families, you have educated children, you have reduced poverty, you have a stronger society. We all know that. That's a fact. Right? But women tend to underestimate just how wide their influence is. Yes? We tend to always be apologetic. Right? It's very hard for us. Everything's so sorry. I didn't mean this. I'm sorry. I'll do it this way. We tend to be that kind of people. We forget that all the roles we play, in each of those roles we play as a wife, as a woman, as a sister, as whatever, we influence a lot of people in the way we can, the way we touch people's hearts. We bear children, the way we bring up our children. There's so much that women do, but we tend to underestimate it. I want to give you two examples. One of Tawakkul Karman. She won the Nobel Prize in 2011. The first Yemeni, first Arab, second Muslim woman to ever receive this, and second youngest Muslim woman. When she went to collect her award, her Nobel Prize, she was asked by a reporter that, why are you covering your head? I mean, it goes against your intellect and your education. Here you are, this famous journalist, you got this award, and you're covering your head. And this is what she answered. She said, man in the early times was almost naked. And as his intellect evolved, he started wearing clothes. What I am today and what I'm wearing today represents the highest level of thought and civilization that man has achieved, and it is not regressive. It is the removal of clothes again that is regressive back to ancient times. I thought that was a very, very good answer. Beautiful answer. And then, of course, everyone knows about Malala, our favorite, youngest Nobel Prize winner. I mean, look at what she's done. Look at what she's become a symbol of human rights for children, for education. Okay? So I'm going to bring you back to the future, right now, 2018, the last time I checked. Do you know USA has not ratified CEDAW, the Commission on the Elimination of Discrimination, all kinds of discrimination against women? It has not been ratified by USA yet. 2018, and it's keeping company with whom? With Iran, Sudan, and Somalia. Okay, it's something to think about. So why? Why won't USA ratify CEDAW? What I read was that religious groups and conservative groups are very concerned that if they do it, it'll undermine traditional family values. If you give rights to women, you're going to undermine family values. You'll have to pay men and women the same for work of equal value. It will provide access to reproductive rights and contraception, and it will undermine the sovereignty of USA. Okay. To think about, right? If you put it in perspective, isn't that shocking? I was shocked. I was shocked when I read this, that in 2018, USA has still not ratified CEDAW. And we are the ones who proclaim human rights. Okay? So where is our problem? I had asked you ahead, why do we have so much of problems? And I think our problem is really that we have lost our moral compass. I really think that we seem to have forgotten our purpose in life, why we're here, what are we supposed to really do with our lives, and what do we do for other people? Okay? Because education and economic status are important, but they're not enough. You cannot use that just to free women from the bondage of the society. Yes, we talk about secular education. Women are really going very far in secular, but then you need a balance of both secular and religious. But I think it's not just knowledge. That's why I wrote the practice. If, say, I get a degree in engineering, okay? I do extremely well. GPA 4.0, I get a good job. But if I can't apply that knowledge, I'm going to get fired tomorrow. Same thing with religious knowledge. It's no point just learning it and by-hearting it if you're not going to put it to practice, if it doesn't become part of you. You have to feel it inside of you and really practice religion too, so that knowledge should become applicable to your daily life. So I think we are falling short in our moral character and our ability to accept responsibility for our actions and our inactions. There's a lot of blame throwing right now, right? Everywhere we look, in society, in politics, we blame everybody. You have to throw the ball in somebody else's court and say, it's not my fault, it's not me, it's somebody else. So I just want to bring in, at the end, I'm just going to talk about how in Islam, how I've said that we have strayed away from the path, but I want to bring back what Islam teaches about the stages of human development, okay? So in Islam, they talk about 3 stages. The first is what we call the natural stage, the primitive stage, the animal stage, okay? So all of us have it. What do I mean by that? Your eating behavior, your drinking behavior, your sleeping behavior. When we get very angry, we get impulsive, we get fearful, or we hate somebody, or we love somebody. These are all animalistic instincts. And people are oftentimes, they misunderstand. They say, oh, love is a good quality, hate is a bad quality. No. Love is a good quality if at the right time you show love, and hate is a good quality if it is at the right time that you show hate or disapproval or you punish somebody. Okay, so if I am going to show love to my child all the time and my child is caught stealing and I don't punish my child because I love my child so much, that's no longer a good quality, now it's a bad quality. Okay, so these are animalistic qualities. So because we as human beings, God has given us reasoning power, we are able to take all of these animal instincts and put it to the right use at the right time by using our reasoning power. And that's what the Quran says takes you to the next level, the level of moral stage. The moral stage is called the reproving stage, because this is the stage where your conscience tells you, am I doing right? Was this right? Was it wrong? Did I say the right thing? Did I hurt somebody's feelings? Did I take something that didn't belong to me? You start questioning yourself. Okay? So we call it the self-reproving self, because you're constantly questioning yourself that, is this right? Is it wrong? So it's really the hardest stage, because you're constantly in this limbo. And then, of course, if we are lucky and we pass that stage, you reach the highest stage, which is the spiritual stage where we call the soul is at peace, where you do every moral action for the right reasons at the right time and for the right occasions, right? So now you've begun to feel that this is right, this is wrong, and your heart is at peace. Okay? And many of us, I think, I would rightfully say that we are all struggling at stage 2. Okay? We are all in that fulcrum. Right, wrong, yes, no, did I do it, did I not do it? So when you think about refining our moral consciousness, what the Quran says is that to improve your moral consciousness, you have to do 2 things. You have to do good, but at the same time, you have to avoid bad. Okay? We don't think like that. We think, I've done good, but at the same time, you have to refrain from bad. That is why it's such a struggle. Because while you're trying to do good, you're also trying to stop doing bad. Only then can you elevate your moral consciousness. Okay? And that is why the Quran refers to this stage as jihad bin nafs. Nafs is what? Nafs is self. Jihad is a struggle. Another misunderstood word. When we hear the word jihad, it's let's go to war, let's kill somebody. Jihad means struggle. If you're studying for an exam, it's your biggest jihad. Let's say I'm terrible in math and I'm struggling to get a B or a C. That's my jihad, because math is a difficult subject for me. Okay, so that word jihad only means struggle. So it's a struggle with myself, it's a self-striving. And that is why Prophet Muhammad said that of all the jihads, when we talk about that word jihad, going to battle, going to war, fighting for your religion, speaking out, no matter all of that, he says the biggest jihad that you have is jihad of your nafs, of your soul, of trying to become a better person. Okay? So then in conclusion, I'm just going to use this Quranic verse to close. And why do I use this Quranic verse? I use it quite often, actually. Everyone has a goal towards which they turn their attention. Why then with one another in doing good works? Okay, why do I pick this verse? Because when I think about all of us as a society, we are very competitive. Right? We are very competitive. All your life, when you're brought up, your mother and father will tell you, do well in school, get a good GPA, you have to go to college, then from college you have to maybe go to postgraduate, then you have to get a good job, we compete with one another in promotion, in better salaries, in a bigger house, in a bigger car, right? We're constantly competing. But when is the last time somebody told you, or you thought and said, wait a minute, I'm going to compete in being good? When is the last time our parents told us, you have to excel in not telling lies? It's more about do well in your class, do well in this subject, do well in this, get teamwork, right? We're always talking about material elevation, but we hardly ever talk about moral elevation. That is why I feel this verse is so important, that everyone has a goal, but then use this goal also to become a better person, right? Because I think if we can use this verse, then all of us collectively, can really improve and empower each other and improve not only ourselves, but we can improve the community and the nation and hopefully the world. Okay, so that's my whole talk. Thank you. I think most of you were awake. One or two were drowsy. Little bit. Questions?
Come on, 273 people.
Did it make sense? Yes? Do you have any questions? Did you feel that there were some things that were not clear, or still you have a misunderstanding? Not misunderstanding. Still you have a question about, no, this is not what I've been told. This is what you're telling is different from what I know. Anybody here feels that way? Yes.
Question. Why do you personally wear the hijab?
Why do I personally wear the hijab? I wear it, to be honest, I wear it when I stand on a platform and talk about Islam. I have not worn it at work. When I learned about Islam, when I came to this country as a student, I was not observing the hijab. And then when I started to learn more about Islam and when I had my children, I started to really practice the religion. But by then I was already at the university without a headscarf. So at work, I wear a lab coat, but I don't have a headscarf. I feel like my lab coat covers part of me. But here, whenever I stand up in a platform, or if I'm going to my masjid, or I'm going for anything to do with religion and Islam, I cover myself. So why do other women cover, or just you asked about me?
I was just
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, you talked about honor killings,
Yes.
and there are some who engage in honor killings who believe that they are actually being observant of the Quran.
There's totally wrong interpretation, totally. Because there is no verse in the Quran that talks about honor killing. It says, don't take a life. If you take one life, you've taken life of all the mankind. So there is no such thing as honor killing. They may belong to a Muslim tribe somewhere, and therefore culturally then they do it. And then they say, because my religion told me to do it. But it's not, no. Same with female circumcision. There is nowhere in the Quran that talks about it. But it's still being practiced. And it's being practiced in Islamic countries, right? Egypt, Iran, right? It's still being practiced by them. Indonesia. Yes.
I like how you mentioned earlier the balance of the man and the female sharing the benefits equally, or sharing the reward equally. And that's sort of like the Old Testament in the Christian Bible, how the woman's supposed to be subservient, but then in the New Testament, when Jesus talks about both men and women putting their needs first, that way both needs are met.
Yes.
And there's not one hierarchy.
Yes.
Like I can see the similarities.
Yes.
How people will take it, whether it's preachers
Yes.
or whatever, will take things out of context
Yes.
to create their own doctrine. And it seems like that's the same with Islam. There's
Yes.
so much misunderstanding, and there's some radicalists who have sort of created their own doctrine and sort of vilified people who practice Islam. So a lot of similarities there, and how it's dictated and how it's bits and pieces are pulled out and used for different churches. And
To justify their own gains, yes. And always it's taken out of context. There is, for example, there's a verse in the Quran which says, don't come near the Quran. Yes, okay, I won't come near the Quran. But it says, unless you're clean. So it's talking about cleaning yourself, doing your wuzu, and then reading the Quran. But if you just take that verse, you say, okay, don't come near the Quran. But we don't read it in the full context, so we don't read the verses before and the verse after. When you read all the verses together, then you get the picture of what really is being told to you. And I believe so much in, right has been distinguished from wrong, that those of you who really practice your religion, no matter what religion we're talking about, we all know in our heart what's right and what's wrong, right? So then you interpret according to your morality. I always believe in that. You'll interpret a verse according to how close you are in your relationship with your Creator and to your human beings. Yes?
Someone wants to argue against the U.S. signing the Sudan, is that how you say it, Sudan? The UN Convention for...
Oh, CEDAW, yes, yes.
You can say it's kind of have conflict with the First Amendment. Religion might be against contraception for women, so if they do sign it, they argue that it's going to be against our Constitution. So what would you say about that?
But how can it be against the Constitution? Because it's considered to be the International Bill of Rights, and it is proposed by USA to the rest of the world. So most of the world has followed it. 36 or 46 countries have already ratified it, except for the countries that I mentioned.
If they do sign it, that means they have to provide abortion, they have to provide contraception. So that's against some people's religion. I think that's one of the reasons why they don't want to sign it.
Yeah, but then don't propose it, and don't make other countries sign it. That's...
You're the one proposing it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you so much for coming today. I had a question about where do you see in parts of the Middle East or the North African world, where do you see things that make you most hopeful for change for the status of women in those places?
Education.
Education?
It's coming. Even in Saudi, they're sending their people here to study. The women who are coming here, they're bright young women. I have 2 in my lab right now doing research. They're tremendous. So when they go back, they are going to change the whole society, the way they think, right? And same with Africa. I think education, I've always felt that education is the number one, the key for women to change their status. Do you agree? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes.
Is that slowly changing overseas, where girls and women are becoming more educated, or they're allowed to have an education? Is that slowly changing?
A lot.
Okay.
It has changed a lot. Now, I think it has changed because when I hear from my students, when they go back and they write to me, they say, yes, things are changing. They have jobs there. They have so many universities for women right now, right? They're teaching, they're pharmacists, they're doctors. They are all... So I think it's going to happen. In another 20, 30 years, I think you're going to see a big change. And these same women, when they're educated, I think then they interpret the Quran according to the way Quran is supposed to be interpreted. They no longer are just going to say, because my father said so, my uncle said so. Yeah.
End of the class now?
About 10 more minutes.
Yes.
So do you think that a lot of those areas are denying or trying to deny the education of women?
Yes.
Is that because it's kind of like a way for them to reserve their, I guess,
Dominance.
force
Yes.
in a sense?
Yes.
Because then they keep the women
Yes.
subservient and in a sense have them as their, quote unquote slave or doing it for them and using education or the lack of education.
One is poverty. In some places, there's so much poverty that if they have to choose, if a parent has to choose between a boy and a girl, they'll send their son to school and keep the girl at home. That's one problem. The poverty is one issue. Then the opportunities. And then places like Saudi Arabia, who's really now thinking far ahead and saying, we can't take constantly getting all American and European experts to our country. They've started to train them so that now, like our students who are going back are now the professors there. So they're telling foreigners to go back to your country. We now have enough of our own. So that's the vision that they have now in order to create for both men and women. But then when you think about Afghanistan, or you think about rural Pakistan, or you think about certain places, then you're going to still have this dominance and tribal, the man of the house, I've said it, you can't get educated. What happened to Malala, for example? Right? She tried to go out the bus, then the Taliban came and attacked them, right? That's what happened. Yeah, she got injured very badly. There was another hand up here. Yes?
I was just, so is it still like unlawful to shake hands if a woman who's practicing Islam is to shake hands with another male, or is that still? I'm asking because when I was still living in California, we had guests at our work, and I didn't know, so I extended my hand to shake someone's hand, and I was looked at like I was a chemistry set. So I didn't know. I didn't know that was unlawful or that was appropriate.
I think it's cultural, because when I think of the students who come to our campuses, when they first arrive, if they come from Middle East or something, they'll come with their brother or with their father or with their husband, right? They will come to class. First couple of times, they're unable to look at a professor straight in the eyes. And I often have to educate the admission committee that they're not backward. They're not shy. That's a culture. They'll take a little while to start looking at you and saying, Professor, I have a question. That's a culture. So you have to give them that much time to recover from where they come. But after 2-3 years, these students are just like you and me. So when I think about myself, I'm not going to go out of my way to shake hands or touch a man. But if somebody does, I will shake hands. Because there is no other motivation or ill intent. And this is the culture of America. I live in America, so I will. But if I was to let's say I went to Japan, you're going to bow a lot till your back hurts. So you're not going to shake hands there. In India, you're going to say namaste, right? So it's according to the country and the culture of that country. It doesn't have anything to do with the religion of that country.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes?
I don't really have a question. I just don't like that awkward silence. But I just wanted to say that was a really great lecture. I learned a lot, and I think you have really great presentation skills because, I usually hate lectures. I fall asleep in lectures, but that was really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that's why we had to come all the way from Philadelphia.
Yeah, I loved it.
Thank you. You don't let the students go early from class? I always do. That's why I get raving reviews.
Yeah, that's how you get good.
Yeah. Yes.
Are you giving more lectures in the future on this, or on similar topics, or?
There's one more on the 10th, on Saturday.
Okay, here?
Here, not in this room, but on the campus.
Okay.
And there is a website to register for that one because seating is limited. So if you're interested, do you have the link, or I can give you the link to the website?
Okay.
And you can go and register. It's called circleofpeaceonline.org. And on the home page is on the very top right hand side, it says Women in Islam. You click on that, you get the announcement. And on the announcement at the bottom it says Eventbrite. You click on that and then you can sign up.
Okay, thank you very much.
But the talk which I will give on Saturday is the same talk. It's to a different audience this time. But we've been talking about other topics that we would like to do. Yeah, I like to do topics that are really controversial. Then that way you have more interest also. So one that Arif and I were talking about was a topic, is religion unfair to women? Has religion been unfair to women? So it's not just Islam, but all religions, are there components of it that women feel that, again, is it culture or is it religion? Is it in the testament or not? It's us. It's our practice, yeah.
That's why I was really happy to hear you speak balance about how in Islam it is balanced.
Yeah.
And it's not like the Old Testament, or it's not, because a lot of religions they pick and choose.
Yeah.
And so I think every religion can, there's some sort of oppression, if you will, some form of oppression. Or
yeah, there is. But even in a family that doesn't have a religion, let's say this is a family that says, I don't believe in any religion, you'll still find this kind of dominance and, right? What about domestic violence? It's got nothing to do with, you just beat up your wife because you feel like one day, you have low self-esteem. There's so many, we human beings are so complicated. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's very good class.